Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back to the show. We are joined here by 3F Living. Lindsay Joyce is the founder and CEO. Again, 3fliving.com, based out of New York City. Really, they're a team of creative individuals and professionals led by her husband as well as her. It's so cute, the dynamic duo that they are, working with architecture, interior design, and so much more, helping you from the very start through the end. Let me have Miss Lindsay introduce herself. Say hi.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see everybody again. Thanks for having me back. 3F Living, we started it about 10 years ago. We, exactly what Jill said, we're architecture and interior design, and we also do project coordination. So we really help our clients from initial design to move-in day to make a personal and meaningful environment.
Beautiful. Well, we're excited to have you here. Also today, want to talk about the significance of, in general, why start with hiring an architect?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's in the city, it's a little different because with co-op boards and with the city rules and regulations, there is, at minimum, if you take down a wall that's more than 45 square feet, you basically have to file with DOB and get an architect. So just to kind of put what is 45 square feet in perspective for the viewers, it's basically the size of a doorway. So anything more than that, if you're taking down a wall, you have to file with the city and you have to go through a formal review process. So we'll even have clients that have like a galley kitchen and they want to take out the backsplash just to kind of see through to like the living room.
Yeah.
And they'll have to file with DOB. And they'll have to hire an architect. Yes.
Wow.
And so that's, one thing to consider. And then, really without an architect, you need them for approvals. They get you through the board, they get you through the board review process with the building's architect, and they also get you through DOB with the help of an expediter to kind of get that going. So they get all your approvals together. Another thing to think about is that if you're doing a renovation in the city, and when do you really need an architect? Taking down 45 square feet, like we said, but then also if you're changing tub to shower. So if you have a tub and you want to change it to a shower or vice versa, you have to file with DOB, you have to hire an architect and go through that process. And the reason being is because a tub drain and a shower drain are two different sizes. And so because of that, you would have to file with DOB. There's other parts to obviously the technical and making sure that everything is ADA compliant, but really those are the two main things in the city. Other than the obvious thing is that if you're adjoining two apartments together, you would obviously need an architect, but even at minimum, that 45 square foot and then also converting tub to shower is a huge component of that, and when you would need an architect. And one thing that I think that actually sets us aside in terms of just as a residential design firm in the city is that we actually, because we both worked in corporate, both Tomek and myself, he uses a Revit-based program, which is like a 3D modeling and 2D modeling program, which is more of like what a major corporate experience, and that kind of technical aspect of it to give you those visuals is something that you would generally see on like a 1,000,000 square foot like hospital when we were designing those. But we actually he brings that technology even to small scale projects, which I think is very helpful in this process and generally something that an architect would do. So I think that kind of sets us aside just in terms of we're not just any architect, we can also do that as well for the visuals.
Awesome. Good to know. This is exciting stuff. 3F Living, if you're just tuning in here, go to the website. And again, Lindsay Joyce here joining us as the CEO and, of course, interior design expert. And all right, so we got the no on architect. Why should we hire one? And it looks like we kind of have to, no matter how much of a space. 45 square feet small. So you basically need one at all times. Now, let me ask you why you think it's important to hire an interior designer as well.
So this is interesting, and I think that there's a lot of misconception on what does an interior designer do and what does a decorator do.
True.
So I'll kind
Mm-hmm.
of start there.
Sure.
We actually offer both services.
Okay.
Uh, phase one is our part of our phase one service is the collaboration between the
Mm-hmm.
architect and the interior designer, and phase three of our service is the decorating. So the difference between the two is really, the interior designer is going to look out at the space planning and the layout of
Okay.
like where the kitchens, the bathrooms are,
Mm-hmm.
laying out walls, really collaborating with the architect on that. Doing all of the millwork drawings, making sure that there's like a cohesive design and aesthetic that's going through the space through basically your finishes. And that would be like tiles, wood flooring, all of those things are part of an interior designer's scope of work, whereas a decorator would come in and pick out your throw pillows, your artwork, your area rugs, your sofa, basically everything that's not nailed down but makes your space pretty. So that is like a huge difference between an interior designer and a decorator. And why you would need an interior designer, especially in renovating and in the initial phases of the project, is to basically speed up the learning curve for you, for the
Got it.
client. I mean, the internet is a large, space where people can go a little crazy with
Okay.
like
Got it.
pinning
Yep.
a bunch of options and really, not having that cohesive design together. And so that's something that I think that an interior designer and our value to it is really making sure there's one
Yeah.
idea. And we also help with kind of guiding the design, taking your design style and helping you figure that out, but also kind of guiding you towards reputable brands and things that we've value engineered out through the years. So we know the best pocket door systems that are out there. We know, kind of the small
I've
things that
also
you
seen
wouldn't.
recently collapsible stairs.
Yes,
That's
yes. There's,
crazy.
I
For
mean, there's a million things that are out there. And I mean, and it's like the simplest things of, instead of using like a 1/4 inch grout line, use a 1/16 inch grout line. That's going to make it look more high end. Also use color on your grout. That's like another way to customize just like a general subway tile. These are ideas and things on like, they'll see a pretty picture, but like, how do you get there? And the interior designer really helps you get there. And
mm-hmm.
I also think that through this process, the interior designer, and we actually put a quote on Instagram on one of our stories last week that, designers are kind of like marriage counselors in a way.
mm-hmm.
And we actually got like a lot of feedback on that. A lot of people laughed and thought it was kind of hilarious, but also very true. Like we really help with kind of mediating relationships, and whether that's with partners, and with different relationships with whomever we're renovating with, or it could even be mediating between contractors or the buildings, or quite honestly even the architect, even though even though we are husband and wife. I mean, there is, I come from one place and he comes from another. And, it's that process of mediating and trying to execute the curveballs at that highest level. And an
So
interior designer
clearly,
does all of that.
yeah. So, but that clearly you're talking dynamics at this point of working with your
Yeah.
clients because there's different personalities, as even mentioned with you and your husband, and difference of opinions between partners. So, give us some examples of some disputes and how you've
So,
rectified this. How does
yes,
it work? Because, yeah.
client stories. I have a lot. So I won't give out too much information, but just generally. So relationships. So one thing that we see a lot is changing relationships
mm-hmm.
while we're under construction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you a story. This was a very large project down in Chelsea, penthouse. It was a young professional tech guy that sold an app for an absorbent amount of money, and he was like 30. And so he was an amazing client because we started this process. It was just for him. It was this penthouse. It was about a 2.5 year project, going on to 3 years. But we did smart home systems. We did basically this island that moved out and then had a pop-up sink that was
Wow.
underneath it.
Pop-up
Everything was kind of,
sink.
it was it was
Wow.
really amazing. Like
So
everything
cool.
was hidden. And so essentially made kind of a very smart home tech savvy bachelor pad in a
Hmm.
way. And then as we were doing this, he was kind of traveling around and enjoying life. And he met a girl overseas. And this was
Wow.
about 3 weeks from completion. And he came back and he was like, Lindsay, I gotta like introduce you to somebody. And I do. And she has a ring. They got engaged.
Oh my
And
gosh.
right. So now we've designed a bachelor pad. And now there's a fiance in the mix, and we had and potential family and all of this. So then we had to, even though we were 3 months from completion, we had to work together. We had to figure out how
Hmm.
to put up walls in certain areas should there be, a growing family one day, and how
Yeah,
that works. And then how does she fit in the mix? So that's
true.
one thing, the changing relationships while under construction, and where we started and then where we ended. Another relationship dynamic that we kind of mediate and we see a lot of is business professionals in the city, young, middle aged, and they just don't have time to really deal with the renovation, but they have to do the renovation. And so they enlist their mothers to work with me to then execute their design or their project, because they obviously trust their mom. And so I'm now dealing
Wow.
with the mother on behalf of my client, and only speaking to my client maybe once every, I mean, it's a silly dynamic, but it does happen a lot. And this one particular client,
Yeah.
she has hired us to, or the her kids have hired us to basically do a few of their different apartments. And
Wow.
I dealt directly with her, and it was seamless. And then I had another instance where I was dealing with a mother on a project, and she had impeccable taste, amazing
Wow.
taste. We designed the whole thing, and then finally it went out to bid, and the client finally contacted me. He was like, whoa, this is so out of budget. I don't even know what happened
Yeah.
here. And it's like, well, I thought that,
You're just like, okay.
she was translating everything to you. So a mother, so yeah, changing relationships, mothers. And then you also have the partner
Wow.
dynamics, right? So we'll have partners that we work with, and maybe one of the partners is more involved than the other, and it's kind of like helping the one person to make decisions for both people when the other partner is not really engaging so much. So that's
Wow.
one dynamic that we help with. And then the other one is when both partners want to be equally involved in all decisions,
Oh, okay. Got it. Got it.
which which
How is
is,
that? Ah,
it's a little tricky. So one example that I'm thinking of is we had a client where the wife was a little bit more bold, the husband was a little bit more conservative.
isn't
So
that usually the
how do
case? But go ahead.
it is actually it kind
Yeah.
of is. And she would, be on Pinterest, and she'd be
She,
pinning a bunch of things, and we're trying to like, okay, well, let's take a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And the husband was like, okay, but then a few days later, he's like, no, I don't want to do this. So one way that we were able to make sure that the husband felt like that we were making a solid investment, and we weren't going too far down a road where they couldn't resell it in like
yeah.
10 years, was that integrated personality and
Mm-hmm.
boldness through the colors of the doors and the
Love it.
hardware. And hardware
Love
is
it.
interchangeable and paint is interchangeable. And so, everybody felt heard and they got what they wanted and they're happy. And so that was like one example. And I think the last relationship kind of dynamic that we deal with,
Alas, yes,
shockingly,
yes, yes.
are the kids' involvement. And honestly, it doesn't even matter at what age.
Wow.
I've had as young as 4. I've had as old as 17.
Hmm.
And I feel like that, it's also going along
Wow.
with, I think, some new age parenting, right? Like you want your kids to feel more in control and make their own decisions. And so they have
Yeah,
control of something to
of
feel
course.
confident. And so a lot, and I'd say in the last 5 years, I see this a lot more on, us trying to, take what the kids are saying, no matter what age, and making sure that we're not going too far down a rabbit hole. Like we had this one, kid that was like, he was like, I want a secret room. I want a secret room under my bunk bed. I want Pokemon
Of
everywhere. I
course.
want
So cool. Hmm.
and it's like, okay, all right, well, let's find some decals that we
Yeah.
can take off the wall
Yeah.
and let's see how we can, build this custom bunk bed, but not too far down a road where like maybe the secret room at, 8 years old, which is super
Yeah.
cool and a hideout, could then eventually turn into a desk or something when,
Got it.
when he gets
Of
older.
course.
So,
Hmm.
or it's the color of the bedroom. Like they'll come in with like, I don't know, like just like a vibrant color that's right off the entry corridor. And you kind of want to be able to, give them a color that they want, but could also work or pick a wall that not
Okay.
everybody's going to see.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's really kind of fun in a way, challenging, but also a real situation. And all of these, relationships and dynamics are something that, we help with, and we help to make sure that everybody feels heard at the end of the day.
And I just got to back up from like a little while ago. We talked a drop about, you mentioned grout in kitchens as interior design. I have a
Mhm.
quick question for you.
Sure.
I moved, my house is about 20 something years old. So like the kitchen, when I moved in, they redid the inside of the house because it was, not updated, right? So I bought it this way. But so I have this grout, like I have like big square tiles in the kitchen. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, they put like wood floors on like the living room, but now I have that stupid saddle that goes down. So I have
Mm.
like the high grout. One day I want to level it and make it all one thing. But I also hate that my grout is stained because I didn't take care of it, right? So I want to get rid of the grout, right? Um, do you recommend when you do a floor now, right? If I do a floor
Mhm.
throughout my house and one day get it all level, is vinyl any good or do you want wood? I just don't like getting the dirt trapped inside the space. So like you mentioned like little grout. I wish I could have like no
Yeah.
grout. I wish I could have one piece
Yeah.
of floor, but that's not so I can clean it. I'm very crazy with
No.
cleaning. But what do you recommend for a floor through, like that
Yeah.
less maintenance? I don't want the yeah, with less cracks. Is
So,
vinyl not a good choice? I could do
so
porcelain like I did in my basement, which is great, but they have thick grout. And again, I'm worried about I have kids, it gets stained. I don't like the grout.
yeah.
What would you recommend?
I mean, so one thing that we do, especially if you're talking about like an open space leading into an open kitchen, um, one thing is that like I don't recommend vinyl because vinyl
Wear
is
and tear.
essentially, yes, so essentially that's like plastic that's like compressed on top of wood. So if it gets wet, or if like water gets underneath
Okay.
it, or over time it starts peeling off,
Okay, yeah, so
and
no
it's
vinyl.
not,
I need something.
so
What's
no
the other
vinyl.
terminology? What's the other
So
one?
you would do the engineered real wood flooring. So it's an engineered application, but it's pre-stained and it's kind of like a tongue and groove lock. And that's something that you can actually carry out through your kitchen. But if you wanted to eliminate that saddle situation, and it's something that we do a lot, is that we'll do wood flooring butting up to where the kitchen starts. And then we use a Schluter trim, which is like a little piece of metal that goes between the tile and the wood flooring. So it's like
Uh-huh.
a nice seamless transition. You don't have a saddle, especially if they're leveling everything. And then I typically use large format tiles. So
Got
I'll
it.
use 30 by 30 by 30, 40 by 24, and I make sure that the grout line is 1/16.
Okay.
1/16 is like
Minimal
you
to
can't get
none.
any, you can't
Got
get
it. The old
anything
school
in
mine's
there.
20 years old is thicker, so it's probably
Correct.
like a half an inch, whatever. Just
It's like a
annoying.
quarter or something like that.
So
So we're talking like a hairline, and that's something that we do all the time. And there's even tiles that are out there where you don't need grout at all if you get those large format ones that are like slip
really?
resistant. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So would
yeah,
it be okay to customize a house? I mean, is it really engineered wood all the way for a whole floor,
all the way through.
or
Yeah.
all the tile? I mean, one or the other.
You could do either one. And then when you transition it, it's really nice to use that like metal Schluter, because it makes sure that both materials between seasons, because wood expands and contracts,
Mm-hmm.
that it really helps it stabilize in that
Yeah.
location. So that's
Okay.
definitely one thing to consider
All right, good
if
to
you're
know.
doing
Yeah,
that.
because I like the light oak looking wood floor, but I'm scared to get
Mm-hmm.
real wood. I mean, or do people put down real wood in the kitchen throughout the house?
Yeah,
But
we do it all the time. We
is
do it
that
all
more
the time.
expensive, more upkeep, more maintenance is than this engineered
There
wood product?
So the engineered is really just the application of the tongue and groove.
Okay.
And so what they do is that they have a substrate that's underneath the way that they make it. And then they use real, European white oak, and it's just pre-stained to what you want. But technically, once you install these, you can sand them and stain them up to like 3, 4, 5 times, depending. So it's essentially like real wood, but the
Okay.
tongue and groove keeps it locked in place,
All
which
right. Good to
helps
know.
stabilize. Yeah.
Well, thank you. So I took a little note here today because yeah, that
Yeah.
that grout question was on my mind since we started
Yeah.
talking. Like, oh, we're just going with
No,
the
one
flow. We'll bring it up later.
sixteenth. 1/16 is everything.
Oh,
I use
okay.
it everywhere.
Oh my gosh. All right. Did you want to share any more curveballs about stuff that, people should
Sure.
be aware about when renovating in the
Yes.
city? I'm sure there's a lot.
So there is. And I mean, there's a handful that comes to mind. And it's funny. I actually just sat with a client yesterday in my
Mm-hmm.
office, and they came to us for a combination project. And they were like, well, what curveballs should we be aware of? Because they're
Yeah,
trying to allocate money. Like,
of
what
course.
is the financial impact, and what could be, the risk assessment? So a few of them that I always talk about is neighbors. Neighbors, neighbors, neighbors. It is a shared living space in the city, and a neighbor can make or break your project, shockingly. Even if you go through co-op approval, DOB approval, everything, I's dotted, T's crossed. And one project that I'm thinking of is we were doing a combination, and we were changing a kitchen to a master bathroom, and it was abutting a neighboring wall. And the my client was actually on the board of the building, and in passing he went to his neighbor as it was under review and was like, listen, while we're under construction, we may need to open up a 12 by 12 square on the other side of the wall just to be able to get to the shutoff valves so we can do our renovation. The neighbor seemed totally fine. They never had issues with this neighbor. Everything was great. We get under construction, knock, knock, knock. It's time for us to schedule that 12 by 12 square in their sheetrock, which obviously patch, paint, and repair. They were like, absolutely not. You're not stepping foot in our place. Figure it out. And the entire plan, everything was kind of built around the fact that this was going to be their master suite. So, like, how do we get an ensuite in this if it's not going to go here? So then we had to keep flipping everything along one side of the wall and get a special acceptance by the co-op for an extension of what over dry. So we essentially had to put a bathroom that was in an existing walk-in closet, which is not something that typically a co-op would allow you to do. But in this circumstance,
Oh, wow.
it was something that we had to do. And that happens a lot. I mean, it happens with plumbing a lot. So I think we touched upon this a little bit in the last
Wow.
episode, but we'll have it where we do get approval to expand wet over dry
Right.
in like bathroom areas, and we have
Mm-hmm.
to tap into a plumbing from underneath.
Oh
They could deny
gosh.
you, and then you
Yeah.
change your design. And there's townhouse projects. So just the sheer age of the building, 100-year-old townhouse that you're gutting, you have to assume and you have to manage the client's expectations that we're going to get in there and we're going to demo. And this was built over 100 years ago. We have no clue what we're going to find in these walls. Like and it all has to be built up to code. So it's kind of like starting
prepare
the project,
for the unexpected,
stopping,
and prepare for it to take longer than it should be.
Very,
and I
very,
feel so
very
bad
long.
about that person with that neighbor. I could imagine how they look at each other in the elevator.
It was awful. And then we have this one project that actually was just in the New York Times on New Year's this year. It was like a full page spread of us and this particular client, where we did 2 legal combinations for them. One was a vertical and one was a horizontal. And so the vertical combination was in a co-op on the 8th floor, which is something that is really not heard of, is cutting into a concrete slab, putting in a staircase. You see this a lot in townhouses and other things, but that whole impact to the building and the neighbors, it was very daunting. So even though we were able to get through that project, we had to constantly start and stop the job site just because of the neighbors and the vibrations.
Yeah. All right. So, and just want to close out today with a testimonial. I mean, it's always important to have. And again, on the website, it's 3fliving.com. I was referred to 3F Living by my real estate broker from the start. Lindsay was amazing. I was close to buying 2 adjacent apartments, for which before I made an offer, I asked Lindsay to give me an idea of what the floor plan could look like when combined. Now, both times she understood the urgency and quickly drew a gorgeous layout. When I finally did purchase an apartment, it was one directly above me, which meant I would need a vertical combination. I had never gone through a renovation of this magnitude. I was also the first in my building to do a vertical combination, which added additional complexity, needed an architect, engineer, expediter, creative layout design, interior designer, contractor, project manager. So 3F Living was really a one-stop shop, which is so important for everything. From day one, Lindsay guided me through the whole process. She made a daunting journey as smooth and stress-free as possible. Somehow Lindsay had a solution and recommendation for literally everything along the way, regardless of what unforeseen situation arose. Lindsay was always calm and positive and was able to work around it. She's organized, professional, and experienced. Her business partner, Tomek, is a licensed professional architect and is equally as skilled as Lindsay. Together, the two of them bring to life whatever vision you have in mind. And if you don't have a vision in mind, they will work with you to create the space that you love. Another bonus in working with 3F Living is that your renovation will stand out from most renovations I have seen, from their ability to make the most of every square foot to their unique eye for tile, flooring, fixtures, wall treatments. You'll be left in beautiful space, and the process will be just as enjoyable as possible. You won't go wrong with 3F Living. This is Lauren, a homeowner, and there's more testimonials. We don't have time to get to them, but we'll talk more about them next week. But it's always great to have great people recommending you and clients, which is amazing. 3fliving.com. On Instagram, it's 3F Living, and again, the number 3. And for Google reviews as well, 3F Living on Google reviews. Lindsay, thank you so much for being here today. Great show.
Thank you so much, Jill. I appreciate it.
All right. So look forward to next time we speak, and we'll talk about more of those client reviews, and really excited to speak with you. And congrats about that New York Times article as well. I want to take a peek. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.